Life has a way of shaping us through moments we never planned for. Some moments lift us, while some break us in pieces no one can see. Today on Life Experience, we are stepping into a story that is not just a story. It's a journey of pain, courage, survival, and the rebirth of purpose. Many people sometimes see the strong voice, they see the confidence, they see the smile, but they don't know the silent battles fought behind closed doors. They don't know the nights someone cried quietly so no one would hear. They don't know the fear that hides inside a heart that once believed in love. But they also don't know the strength it takes to walk away, the strength it takes to say, I have had enough, and the strength it takes to turn wounds into wisdom and scars into service. So today we are honored to sit with a lady who lived through domestic violence, domestic abuse. She survived it, she healed from it, and now she uses her life to help others find their own courage. This isn't just an interview. This is a message of hope for someone who feels trapped, for someone who feels confused right now, for someone feeling ashamed or alone. Our journey reminds us of one simple truth. You may lose many things to pain, but please do not lose your worth. Do not lose your voice, and do not lose your future. And you are never too broken for God to rebuild. Welcome once again to Life Experience. Today we speak truth, we speak courage, and we speak freedom. And speaking on all of this is Miss Joyce Okugbowa. Miss Joyce, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Joyce Okugbowa is a committed philanthropist and an 18-year survivor of domestic violence, whose personal journey has fueled her passion for advocacy, healing, and social change. Transforming her experience into purpose, Joyce founded The Valley, the Domestic Violence Awareness Line Initiative, in 2018, a dedicated helpline that offers support, guidance, and intervention for individuals experiencing any form of abuse. Our philosophy is very simple and yet profound. If I help one person, then it's worth my while. Guided by this belief, she has counseled numerous men and women, providing comfort, clarity, and hope during their most difficult moments. In 2022, Joyce expanded her advocacy through Speak Out with the Valley, an online program that brings together survivors, therapists, lawyers, and police officers in open and honest conversations about all forms of abuse. This platform has become a safe space for education, empowerment, and community learning. Continuing our mission to break cycles of violence before they begin, Joyce leads breakfast discussions with the Valley, an outreach initiative that takes domestic violence education into schools by engaging young people early. She works tirelessly to reduce future statistics of abuse and build a generation grounded in respect and empathy. Joyce is also the founder of Dress for Success, a non-profit organization providing corporate clothing to young people preparing to enter the professional world, ensuring they step into their careers with confidence and dignity. A devoted mother and a grandmother, Joyce enjoys traveling, fitness, and embracing life with gratitude. Her conviction remains steadfast. No one should express violence towards anyone, least of all a loved one. Walking away is far more powerful than choosing to harm. She's popularly referred to as MJ. Beautiful. So before we dig into your story, can you share one peaceful moment from your life that has kept you grounded?
One peaceful moment?
Yeah.
I guess prayer time. Faith has kept me grounded and it continues to keep me grounded.
Thank you very much. Now let us just dive into the story of the day, into the experience of the day. How did you meet your ex-partner?
I met him through some friends, a friend of a friend. It was very early in my 20s, maybe 22 24, 23. And a friend said, do I want to come to a party? No, to hang out with some friends who, funny enough, we grew up in the same area in Lagos. This was in the UK. And so I went to their house. So we had all grown up together. And he was the only one that I hadn't really met. And they invited us to a party the next day. And he said he was going to come and pick us. He had a car in those days, which was a trip. And he picked us up. And that began my journey how I met him.
So what initially drew you to him?
And I always say to now that for me personally, and this is a personal joke, that I just don't, any man that dances too much for me is a turn off, because that's what the attraction was. You're young. I really didn't know much about dating. And looking back now, I had no business dating because I had just come from Nigeria with very strict parents to the UK, where there was a lot of freedom. And I met this gentleman, and he knew how to dance. He was cute looking and he was put well together on the outside. And, he had a car. Like I said, we were in our 20s then. So anybody that had a car was a big deal. So, I said, yes, let's start dating. And, I didn't have a clue what to do or what was in store for me. But that's how it started.
With no clue, I was going to ask you that. What is actually love to you? What love meant to both of you then?
So love for me was based on two things. Now, in hindsight, I can look back and clearly define that. I couldn't. So love for me was anything that came out of Mills and Boons, because that's what I knew. We read all these Mills and Boons books. Well, I read them growing up. I don't think I missed a single one. And now when we look back and we look at those books were pretty much abusive when you think about it. It was always a rich man going for this virgin girl, putting her through so much turmoil, and then at the end of the whole saga, they lived happily ever after. So that was my kind of warped love. Remember that we grew up in a generation where my parents never spoke to us about love. It was more education. You have to be brilliant, and then you have to be successful in your own right. No woman should be taken for granted. So my father really pushed on that, so that we could be independent. He never really spoke to us about marriage. He never spoke to us about having children. It was all about your education and being successful. So when I met, the gentleman and became my husband, that was my warped thinking. And again, my parents' sort of relationship, because it's what you see that you go on to become. My parents, looking back now, my parents' relationship was pretty turbulent. A lot of arguments as well in the house. So that was my kind of norm. When I look back now, I really didn't have a yardstick to measure what I was going into with.
So I can say that probably you never noticed the signs that could have been obvious while you were dating.
So did I know the signs? No. I mixed up the signs to feel that he cared. So one thing that came up very, very quickly was the control. And at first, because I was in uni, it actually felt good that somebody cares so much for me that he doesn't want me to go out, that he wonders what I'm doing with people, that I'm not supposed to speak to this person. So in the beginning, now looking back, those were real red flags. I kind of thought, okay, my dad was this way and my dad loved me. And so this gentleman that is doing exactly the same is reciprocating what my father gave to me. And so really, I didn't realize there were red flags then in the beginning, but very soon, the control became very claustrophobic. And, it just wasn't sitting well with me. I knew deep down that something was not right.
Think about now, because I can say that in those days, it will have been a bit difficult anyway, like you said, to recognize red flags, because the strictness was so much there that even when you see the red flag, you may think that probably you needed correction or something.
Absolutely correct. Yes. And that's what I said. It was just another spin-off of my father, who had been so strict to us in Nigeria. And then going back to the UK, it was just another chapter in my life where somebody else, another male figure, was strict with me. So it didn't at first, like you said, ring any red bells. But deep down in my gut, even then, even though I was so naive, something did not sit right. Something was not right. Something was off, as we say now. And
your friends never saw anything, probably called you to say, to tell you something about the behavior being off, or something for you to watch out, or Something like that.
Ironically, the first episode of violence for me was my friend. He actually slapped my friend, not me. I had a friend who was very overzealous. She was one of those mouthy, gobby friends, and we're all friends together. I've been dating him for a few months, and they both used to smoke cigarettes at the time, and they got into a tussle about cigarettes, and she came upstairs. I wasn't there when it happened. I was upstairs in the house, and she came upstairs and she was crying, and she said he slapped her. And I was like, wow, slapped her. But in my warped thinking again, I thought, well, you are gobby, you talk a lot, you're overzealous, you can be rude. So I kind of brushed it off that, she kind of, if I'm being honest, deserved it. It's because it was her, that anybody else, he wouldn't have done that too. So that was the first incident. So, and she, and looking back now, she herself was from the sort of background that I was, in that there had been a lot of abuse along the line with her bringing up as well. So I guess we were on the same level of, we didn't really know any better. That's the truth of the matter.
What you just said now made me laugh, because I was talking to someone a few days ago, and I could remember a time, and it was actually a pastor that looked at his wife and was like, in public, and who do you think you are? Get out that place.
Wow.
At that point in time, we never saw it as abuse.
No.
We thought that the pastor was just being strict and to
Absolutely.
put every one of us on our toes.
Yeah. And and it was so rampant then. Abuse was, was very rampant then. But like you said, nobody. Maybe towards in the middle, maybe about a few years after, when the bruises started to show, and then they started being. Remember, for me, he didn't really show his true character when there were people there. So he wouldn't do anything in front. He would dare not do anything in front of my family. No, that was a no-go. He wasn't one of those. But gradually, he would do things like, if we had a friend of mine around and he was getting angry, he might tell them to leave. So they started to put two and two together. And then it came, this guy's treating you badly. Why are you there? Then the comments were made. But again, like a lot of abusive relationships, even at that time, anybody who commented had to go. They couldn't be my friend, because he would say, he always used something, he would say, it's you and I against the world, he was saying Yoruba, all those things to keep you, by his side. And then, like a lot of abusers, they cut you off from the people who they feel could rescue you. They cut the family off, the friend that is opinionated, that will come in and make a comment or try and encourage you. You're cut off. So you're isolated gradually. And it's, it's a day at a time. It's not just a one-off thing. They take their time to groom you enough to take you away from these people. And then again, for me, I was tired of having to explain why I had another bruise, why my eye was swollen, why there were stitches in my arm. So it would be better for me to just, stay away until I healed and then see these people again.
But your eyes bruising and body pain and all that, those ones came after signing the dotted line, after saying, yes, I do.
No, they came before. I can't even sit back and tell you that. Yes, I knew what I was going through. It's so funny, because when we did the big wedding, because we did a small registry, which nobody really knew about in the beginning. And then a couple of years, many years after, maybe about 10 years into the relationship, we decided we wanted to have a big wedding. And by then, my friends knew, my family knew, and they weren't happy on the wedding day. And myself and my chief bridesmaid cried. We cried all through. And people thought we were crying tears of joy, but we were crying because we knew that deep down that I was doing the wrong thing. So people went around and said, oh, it was so cute. They cried, they cried. We were not crying tears of joy. I can tell you that for free, But again, abusive relationships make you feel as if you're trapped, and you almost feel like there's no way out. It's an isolated place to be, very isolating.
When you think that change will come after doing the elaborate wedding?
I kind of knew it wasn't, because by then, 10 years, you knew that...
a leopard cannot change its skin.
Yes, I knew that. But what I didn't realize is, I didn't think, because he would tell me all the time that nobody would want me. And I think after hearing that for so long, I think that was my greatest fear. Not so much as ending it, but I believed him that nobody would ever want me. He told me, no one will ever want you. I've slept with you. I've disvirgined you. You've had a child. You're second, what did he used to say? Second hand or second something. And I believed that. And those are the reasons why I kind of stayed longer, because I actually felt that, I was worthless. When you hear a record over and over again, you start humming it. You don't even know subconsciously that you're humming to the tune because you've heard it so many times. It's the same thing with abuse. You hear that tape played in your head so many times that you don't know when you begin to believe it. Yeah. So you believe the narrative.
Let's go back to during your dating period. Now we tell couples to sit down and then talk about their shared values, talk about their future, their expectations. Did you ever do that?
So, one of the biggest things that I realize now is we only ever spoke about his dreams, his aspirations, what he wanted to do, how I needed to pump money into his dreams. And it was never about me. It was almost, and that's one of the biggest things that I took away from that, that anybody that doesn't sit down and talk about both of you together, because you're going to become one. It was always one-sided. And how I put up with that, I think towards the end, I kind of said to him a couple of times that we never talk about me. What about my dreams, my aspirations? What about what I want to achieve in life? It was always about him and how I am going to support him to get to his own dreams and aspirations, a big red flag. We never spoke about the values, how many children he wanted, how did he see himself in 5 years, in 10 years, to see if we even aligned. There was no talk about that. And I think a lot of our generation, it was hit and miss. I'm not sure how many people really sat down and spoke about values and all of that. In my clique, it was how popular you are, which job you had at the time, what family did you come from, and that sort of thing. So, I'm a real advocate today of, what you just said. It's very important that you sit down, because like my friend said, you might be talking about your dreams in the Caribbean and the south of France. He might be discussing about Mushi. And so how are they going to ever align? They're never going to align. And that's where the problem will be, If my dreams and aspirations are going to be in Tokyo and Japan, and you're saying VI here and, and Surulere, then, they're not going to align.
Very interesting. Okay. Now, since the behavior started even before signing the dotted line, you must have had arguments, conflicts and all that before getting to signing it. Any particular way of resolving this conflict, or you just have to take whatever he says, accept it and then move on?
Yes. So there was never anybody that I could talk to. I was one of those people that was very ashamed of what was going on. I remember one time, I think I just had my son. During my pregnancy, I was very, very ill. I had been admitted for 3 months before my due date. So I had actually done my final year exams inside the hospital. And it was I had preeclampsia, really bad preeclampsia. And if you know anything about preeclampsia, it's stress and high blood pressure during pregnancy, and you are high prone to lose the child. And my family, especially my brothers, were furious because he was hitting me while I was pregnant. There was no stopping. And to anybody that listens to that, that's just barbaric. Why would you, it's bad enough that you're hitting a woman who is, not carrying a pregnancy, but somebody who is already, challenged because they have a pregnancy. So he was beating me during the pregnancy. So my blood pressure was very high and I was admitted, and my brother called me and said, listen, he's going to get our cousins, to come out. They're going to break his legs, they're not going to kill him, but they will break his leg. They will rough him up a bit so that he can know that he shouldn't do this to me again. And I started crying and begging for him and saying, no, please don't do that. Please don't do that. So my brother said, you know what, the next time, all we're waiting for now is for them to tell us that you're dead. That's what we're going to wait for, because we don't understand why they are still here when this guy is treating you this bad,
Now, there are so many forms of abuse. You have the emotional, the verbal, the financial, psychological, physical, sexual, name it. We have all sorts. Which ones did you experience?
So and then somebody, I don't like it when people say, but physical is better than mental. Pray that you never have any. I had physical, I had mental, I had emotional, I had financial, and I had sexual as well. And there's none better than the other. People say, when it's physical, at least they beat. Who wants to be beaten? Do you understand? Who wants to be beaten? I had physical, which was regular. I had sexual because when you say no, after being beaten, the last thing that you want to do is then become intimate with the person who he has forgotten that he's beaten you and he has apologized and he has moved on. You're still having the bumps. You're still looking in the mirror with your scars and all of that, and he wants to be intimate with you and you're saying no, but he's saying yes. So, the last thing on your mind is becoming intimate, but they have their way anyway. So that was that. And then the abuse mentally was just on a regular basis, just strips you of your dignity, constantly being put down, told you're worthless, being spat on, being slapped and kicked as if you're an animal. You don't wish that on your enemy. And mine was double whammy. I say, God, really, this challenge that you gave me, because mine was even a double whammy because he was extremely, very, 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 I've never met anybody so stingy in my whole life. Extremely stingy. So coupled with the abuse, there was that as well. So that was financial control as well. Having to survive with somebody who doesn't give you money, who doesn't spend money, who just hoards money, not give you money because he doesn't have. Gives you money. He doesn't give you money because he doesn't want to give you money, even though you have a child together, even though you're legally his wife, even though you're literally doing most of the things in the house on your own. He don't care. So unfortunately, those are the ones that I had.
Putting everything on a scale,
Yeah.
Which one felt most damaging to you, and why will you pick that?
I think the physical, because the physical was very traumatic. The physical led me to hospital, stitches, black eyes. I think the physical because you could see yourself every day, especially the next day when the wounds are still there. The physical because you knew that people were looking at you and they knew what had happened. The physical because your son can see what is going on even though you're telling him otherwise. And the confusion in his eyes when he's looking at you because he doesn't understand what you're talking about. But he can see that mommy is crying and he can see that mommy doesn't look too good. The physical because it strips you from all your dignity, A lot of shame comes with that how can anyone treat me the way he's treating me? How can anybody say they love you and treat you, worse than an animal? The confusion in your head that, this thing is not adding up. So I would say the physical because you can see the scars yourself. And with the physical comes emotional anyway, because you're seeing yourself and the thoughts are going, And when they tell you stupid things like, it's your fault. If only you had behaved. If only you didn't speak back. If only you didn't dress the way I told you not to. If only. Never taking responsibility. And, I say, people think that these are people that abuse, both men and women, are a certain way. Maybe they look, vicious, they're tall, they're dark, they're vicious looking. No, abusers are some of the most charismatic people in the world. My ex-husband was somebody, if you sat down with you and he would make you laugh so badly. He was so funny, entertaining, but there was a darker side to him, So yes, the physical was something that I would not wish on my enemy,
Thank you, MJ. I would like you to hold your thoughts there while we go on a short break.